let's do another wrestling game. Actually, let's do the king of all wrestling games, the greatest wrestling game ever released. Fire Pro Wrestling Returns. Released in 2005 by the almighty Spike, Fire Pro Returns is the culmination of an incredible series, the best thing going since the late 80s. The Xbox Live Arcade game that appeared under the series name doesn't count. Fire Pro Returns is the pinnacle, a game that back in the day I specifically had my PS2 modded for, and that I have put, hundreds of hours in. Thousands maybe. It's special in other words. So for the uninitiated, what is Fire Pro? It's a series of largely Japanese only wrestling games that started back in the 80s on the PC Engine. They've always been 2D and have always looked and played largely the same, only with improved graphics of course and newer modes, positions and moves over the years. While totally unofficial and not licensed by any wrestling companies in any way, mostly, Fire Pro games have always aimed to provide an overview of the wrestling world as a whole. You get full rosters for all major and some minor Japanese wrestling companies, along with quite a few American wrestlers, freelancers, luchadors, joshi wrestlers, and the odd legend. And in recent years the game started to include MMA fighters as well, along with appropriate modes. Over the years the roster has just gotten bigger and bigger, culminating in Fire Pro R, which features a staggering 327 wrestlers out of the box. And you've got more than enough space to keep the game updated and to keep them company. This game features 500 slots for wrestler edits. There's a lot here. All of this made Fire Pro one of the most sought after import games for years, from the SNES onwards. While there were several bloody good games released before it, Super Fire Pro Wrestling X Premium from 1995 was probably the first one to really bring the series to the attention of Western importers, and it was followed by the likes of Six Man Scramble for the Saturn and the almighty Fire Pro D for the Dreamcast, which was considered by most to be the definitive game in the series in the days before Fire Pro R's arrival. The love for the series wasn't all based on import action though. Fire Pro games did make it over to the West a couple of times. There were 2 Fire Pro games released for the Game Boy Advance, both of which did a pretty awesome job of providing Fire Pro action on the go, and of course, Fire Pro Returns was eventually released worldwide in 2006 or so, making it the only regular console version of the game available outside of Japan. And in the end that was more than enough for Fire Pro R to replace D as the definitive version of the game. This game is just manna from heaven for the wrestling fan, not just because of the sheer size of the roster and how much you can do with it, but because of how the wrestling plays out. A Fire Pro match is a very unique thing. It is not a button masher. Don't know where anyone could have gotten that idea. You have to start out with weak moves in a system based on timing. Whenever wrestlers come together, they lock up and after that animation plays out, you can input a move. Whoever's first hits the move, but if you go for strong attacks right off the bat then they will get reversed. You move gradually from weak to medium and then to strong and your finishers. The whole aim is simulation, entirely designed to replicate how a wrestling match should play out, with no real arcade sensibilities at all. And there is, of course, the almighty critical. Most wrestlers can hit criticals with their finisher, but some can do it with strikes, or suplexes, or submissions, and so on. And a critical just ends the match outright. Always a moment, that one, although I do kind of think of it as a simulation of a serious botch. Simulation is the keyword all over the shop. Fire Pro is almost as well designed for simming, that is, doing CPU versus CPU, as it is for playing. You see this in the edits section, where not only do you have the choice of thousands of moves, control over the special traits and attributes and so on, but you can actually mess with the wrestler's CPU logic. This not only changes how often they perform certain moves, but also changes how accommodating they are to the style of other wrestlers, how much of a beating they usually take during a match, the sequences of moves that they perform. There's so much to do, so much to tinker with here. And then you can see the results for yourself in a match. It's a glorious editing system that has never been bettered. All its technical stuff is one thing, but the match itself is a thing of beauty. It's a joy to see all these wonderfully animated 2D sprites, and the moves just have so much impact. There isn't any need for exaggeration, just flow, and that's what it's all about. I'm more of a simmer when it comes to Fire Pro. I don't often play the matches, but I've spent hundreds of hours with the wrestlers in the game, or using edit packs that you can get online. It says a lot that there's still people who create edit packs for this game that are fully up to date with the wrestling world of today. And the matches, well, they can just be epic. The only problem sometimes is that old dreaded Fire Pro pin, the elbow to the back followed by the pinfall. But 9 times out of 10 you see something amazing when playing this game. More than any other game in the Blitz, Fire Pro is something that truly speaks entirely for itself. It's not for everyone, of course. Truly you need to be a wrestling fan to get the most out of this game. It's for a niche of a niche. But back then it never really mattered to Spike too much that they were famous for a game that was for the sort of wrestling fan who would be happy to tinker with edits for many hours, who knew the obscure wrestlers that they loved, and who wanted to use the game to create no end of glorious dream matches, maybe even set up a federation of their own. I was certainly happy to do this for the longest time, and still on occasion I'll come back to Fire Pro. And hey, these days you can get it on the PlayStation Network for a few quid, so long as you've got a US account. Why don't you just go and do that? I mean, why not? It's only the single greatest wrestling game ever, and one that could easily just take over your life for good as you sit, endlessly plotting your favourites push, making minute changes to the logic, and putting the best against the best for all eternity, forever in search of that one true critical. See you tomorrow.